excellence. Hello and welcome everyone to driving your team's adoption of Microsoft 365 and having some success stories from our clients. In this event, one of the things that we've learned over the last couple years of working with lots of different organizations on different capabilities and feature sets of the tools available in Microsoft 365, a common question that we get asked is like, great, what next? How do I really drive adoption of my team? How do I help my team learn these tools, apply it to their world? And so while we've given some tips and tricks in some of the videos we've done over the last several months, I figured let's hear it from the people who have driven adoption inside of their organizations, and what are some things that they learned, and what are some things that they wouldn't do again, and what some things would they maybe do differently sooner. But we're hoping to hear from some panelists of our clients that have driven adoption of Microsoft 365 tools inside of their organization. And so after a real quick moment, we'll hear from them. So I'm Nathan Austin. I'll be facilitating the conversation today. We have a few pre-planned questions to get the conversation started amongst the panelists. But once after we kind of get through some of those, we'll open it up to the attendees and everyone else listening along. So there is a Q&A panel. So if you have any questions, you don't have to wait to the end to ask them. Go ahead and throw them into the Q&A panel, and we will be asking those after the end of the first 30 minutes of kind of discussion. Megan Forrest is also producing behind the scenes. Will be navigating the Q&A panel. So thank you, Megan, for joining us. And before we introduce our panelists, I just have one thing that I always like to hit on is just 1 minute about MyTech. We are not a training organization. That's not our objective, but we've learned that a lot of our small and medium businesses in our community were paying for these tools and subscribing to these tools, but they weren't using them to their utmost effectiveness. So part of our goal in doing some of these tutorials and sessions is to help our clients just take more advantage and to get better return on investment from the tools they use. So, but in the end, we're here to help you with your business and technology from a consulting perspective. We have over the last 20 years, we've learned a lot about what works and what doesn't. Not saying what we do is the only way that works. It's just that we've learned a lot of things that work well together, and that if we use these and collaborate with our clients appropriately, we can actually achieve proven results together. So that's one of our objectives as far as how we like to engage our clients. Our goal ultimately is to remove IT challenges. We know that you have plenty of other challenges in the industry and in the world today. We're just hoping to take a few of those off your plate so that you can be more adaptable to other business challenges and serve your clients better. With that said, together, one of the things I like to say is we believe we can achieve 4 times more value and productivity working with our clients and implementing this proven strategy that's in alignment with their goals and objectives. And if you'd like to learn more about that, please let us know. But otherwise, that's not why you're here. We're here to talk and hear from our panelists. So we are going to go ahead and dig into the panel discussion. And we're going to start by just having the panelists introduce themselves. So here are the folks. Mark is hopefully going to be joining us here momentarily, but we do have Lindsay and Betsy on the call here. And so Lindsay, I'd like to start with you. Could you just introduce yourself, your organization, role, and how long have you been working with O365?
Hi, my name is again Lindsay Carr. I am at Zimmerman Reed. I'm the Director of Administration there. So we have been using Microsoft 365 fully since March, really, but we have offices here in Minneapolis. We also have offices in LA and Phoenix. In our LA office, we're early adapters of Office 365. So they started using it back in December 2019, but it really was when we transitioned over to MyTech from our previous IT vendor. And when we did that back in October 2019, they helped us to kind of crawl, walk, run, and really get used to using a lot of the technology, which came in very handy come working from home. That happened mid to late March.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think we saw a lot of folks experience that. You kind of had to take a leap one way or the other around that time. Thank you, Lindsay. Betsy, how about yourself? So you're in Colorado, so I wanted to highlight that too. So we have an office in Colorado, and I wanted to make sure we are inclusive of that team out there. So Betsy, tell us a little about yourself and then your organization and how you used O365.
Yeah, so my name's Betsy Kincannon. I work in Westminster, Colorado. It's a suburb of Denver. I actually work for a local nonprofit called Growing Home, and we really work to strengthen the families, nurture the community, and connect with the community and nurture children in Colorado at at Growing Home. We've worked with MyTech since the day I started at Growing Home about 3 years ago, and it wasn't until March 2018 that we actually made the big switch to Office 365, but I really would say it was in this past year, kind of starting in January, that we really adopted Teams and using just some of those functions, also SharePoint and other Office 365 functions too.
Awesome. So both of you, really, it's relatively new, diving in deeper with the systems. And I know if Mark joins us, I know that we worked with his team right around the end of the year and the beginning of this year too. So interesting timing then, relative to everything that's going on in the world. So I'll turn it back to you, Lindsay. Is that what, if you could identify, what are some of the key, I always like to focus things on the problems you're trying to solve, right? That I think that helps frame up, you know, how you have driven adoption or why you use certain capabilities. So can you talk a little bit about, and then Betsy, I'll hand it over to you. Yeah. You know, what are, and just pick a couple ones that stick out, key problems you were trying to solve, and what are some of the key things you used to drive adoption and solving them?
So what we were using is, you know, primarily email for internal communication. And, you know, as anyone knows, their email inbox just gets flooded with, you know, everything else. There's so much noise. So I really think turning to, we already had Office 365 for a few years, but we weren't using all of the tools that came with it. So with MyTech, they helped us just kind of learn how to collaborate better. We have offices in, like I said before, Minneapolis, LA, and Phoenix, so it's important to collaborate with those different teams. And we always did it over the phone, but I think there's just a different level of collaboration you can accomplish when you can see their faces and you can collaborate. One of the tools we really use a lot is the Teams channels, and then we're able to edit documents. You know, we can have 3 or 4 people in a document at the same time editing them. And it's been incredible just for collaboration and communication.
Are you finding the way you're structured that you're collaborating within locations as well as across locations, or you know, I'm just curious if that you talked about the video side, but also the document side. I'm just curious if to elaborate on that a little bit.
Yeah, so the way that we set it up, we're a law firm, so we set our teams up based on our practice groups, and our practice groups do go across offices. So that's kind of how we set those up.
Gotcha. Okay, I was wondering about that, if that how that worked for you. So great. So as a kind of the second follow-up to that question, and then Betsy, just stay tuned because I'm going to ask you the same ones. Is what are some of the things that you felt helped you really drive some of the adoption of those things? So I mean, because rolling out a tool and saying, hey, use this is one thing, but how did you really get your team leveraging and taking advantage of the capabilities?
You know, we, excuse me, we identified kind of early adopters of the technology, and then we really tried to use them to show how great the tool is. Another way we drove adoption of the technology is only providing the information that they would need, maybe via email. We provided them in a Teams channel. So it kind of forced everyone, you know, we had some grumblings about it, but it forced everyone to use the technology. And I think now that everyone has used the technology, they love it, and they communicate almost primarily on Teams channels or chats versus email. And I think it's really helped. Just the clutter of email, I think it gets overwhelming.
You know, I really appreciate that you said, you know, because one of the things we've talked about in theory with different organizations is that as an organization, you have to make a decision that this is the platform you're going to choose, whatever platform it is, right? You have to make a choice, because otherwise choosing to then have only communications that are important in Teams versus email, that's a decision, right? I mean, so I love that was one of the things that you kind of, you know, an organizational choice you made in order to help drive adoption. So I appreciate Reinforcing the theory with practice. I love it. Okay, Betsy, let's turn to you. So as a different organization, again, that's one of the reasons why we invited you, because we've got a law firm on one side and we have a nonprofit on the other side. What are some of the key problems you were trying to solve as your organization, and how did you solve them?
Yeah, so we have about 35 employees, and we're actually all pretty much centrally located into one office, with the exception of a lot of folks being out on the road. And I found when I started there that there was such a disconnect of communication. Some were using email, some were using text, some were using WhatsApp, some were always on the phone, some weren't. And then we had like older phones, which wasn't VoIP. And so it's just kind of difficult with that. And we just really wanted to drive kind of community and togetherness and finding a way that we could all communicate together. We have folks that work with us that are fresh college graduates to people that are past retirement age. And so it was kind of a challenge of finding the way to meet people at their needs and where we can communicate with them. And so as we switched over to Office 365, I mentioned it took us a little bit of time to get there. And for us, it was really just kind of recognizing our needs. And to what Lindsay said, we had some early adapters. We had some folks that were really pushing for using Teams. And finally, when our operations team got on board and I saw the functions, I was like, we got to get this out there for us. And so, yeah, I also, to what Lindsay said, we kind of did the same thing. Hey, if you guys want to know what's going on, you have to communicate via Teams. And we've really created those channels, created different ways for people to communicate. And I find myself even talking to coworkers just about their personal life on there too. It's a really great connection where everything's centrally located. And I am so thankful that we specifically switched to Teams in January. Come March, when we have to use it and we don't have a choice, and we find ourselves everyone already knowing how to use it. So then the next point about adoption across our team, like Lindsay said, yes, we had some people, early adopters, that just did it and they were using it for their team. And so then we actually sat down in an in-person meeting with our service manager and our account manager, who I'd like to think we have great relationships with. And I said, hey, we got to get our team on board with Teams, but I am not one to just kind of throw it at them. Oh my gosh, I'm sorry. That's so embarrassing. Just got a kid. So yeah, I just said I'm not one to just kind of throw it to people. I want this to be beautifully organized and set out and roll it out in a way that is really helpful for people to understand. And one of my favorite things about MyTech is they present trainings for us at our staff meetings. We all come together once a month for just an hour and a half, and we had the service manager come and do a presentation on Teams. Everyone was together. We learned how to do it. It was a question and answer kind of panel like we're doing now, and that made a huge difference for us, getting to kind of understand it. And that I just love the personal attention of MyTech, that they were really able to help assist us as we made the switch.
I love that, Betsy. I appreciate, because you also, like Lindsay, you illustrated one of the other challenges that we face a lot of organizations, which is, you know, you're one organization, yet people are using different communication mediums, right? And so depending on their individual preferences, and some could be email or text, or in fact, that's one of the ways in which we started using Teams, is that half of our organization was using Skype, actually before Teams kind of got rolled out, and then half our organization, being engineers, they really liked Slack, which is very much like Teams. But so we were one organization and using two different primary communication tools. It was a real problem. So I love it that that's kind of where you started. Like, we had to just kind of consolidate everybody onto one method. So awesome, thank you for that. And I appreciate that you involved, like you said, the early getting a group of people together, doing some Q&A, doing some training, but also some early adopters. That's awesome. So Mark has been able to join us. Thanks, Mark. I appreciate you being able to make it. So I know you have some great stories to tell as well based on our interaction. So I'd like you to start off by, if you could quickly introduce yourself, since we missed that part, and tell us just how long your team has been using Microsoft 365, and then I'll ask those other questions as well. And you're on mute at the moment.
There we go.
There we go.
Thanks, Nathan, and welcome everybody. Thanks for having me here. Mark Lahobiak. I work with a company called Service Ideas. We're a 75-year-old third-generation company providing products that enhance the hospitality experience, which is an interesting business to be in right now with everything going on. I'm the VP of Operations here at the company. Been here in this role for just about 3 years right now. As far as Office 365, I came into the company in the middle of 2017, and because we're a third generational company, we were transitioning different folks into the organization of different backgrounds, different demographics, different generations, let's put it that way. And so when Betsy was referring to all the different applications that are used, we had a whole bunch of them, and none of which were really synced up or easy to work with. Skype, Slack, all of the different communication tools. So we've been on Office 365 for about a year and a half, and things are quite well. So glad to be part of the panel.
Yeah, so I'll follow up that, Mark, with what are some of the key problems that you were trying to solve? You just alluded to some of them, right? Which is, you're trying to consolidate the tool sets, but what are some of the things you did to either solve those problems and drive adoption inside of Service Ideas?
Yeah. Being a 75-year-old company with a lot of tenured team members as well, we had situations where people were keeping notes in a paper notebook. We had a traditional file server environment that we were using. We had email. I heard Lindsay and Betsy talking about the different problems with using email as a communication tool, but not more of a revision-based tool. That was something that was causing us problems. Here we are a manufacturing and distribution organization as well, so we have different types of roles involved, as well as that tenure that I talked about. So we really had to break through different stereotypes and different habits that people had and really didn't want to change. What we did to drive adoption was we grabbed a small group of functional-based folks to tell us about what was working with the different methods that they had in their processes. And then we used that information to confirm what our IT strategy is. And I want to give a shout out to Nathan and Corey from iTech. I heard those advocations earlier. They came in and helped our team create not only the training schedule for Office 365, but more importantly, the strategy behind what were we trying to do in the business and what did we need IT to be in that strategy. So once that was done, the adoption process became easier with all of the dynamics that I talked about already.
Gotcha. And it's, from what I know, I was part of those, Mark, but it sounded like it was similar to a little bit of what Betsy did, where you brought a certain set of people in your organization together and really collaborated around the problems you're trying to solve as the organization. So, but that's one of the powers that I've really come to enjoy about just the tool set. Again, I'm not just trying to be like a Microsoft advocate here, but I think they've done a good job of enabling, once you have a foundation of understanding and knowledge, you can do a lot with the tools yourselves. You don't need to call IT or us or whatever anytime you need to do something because of the flexibility. So I think that's, I appreciate that, and that's kind of what the two of you are talking about there in particular. So all right, as we move along here, if people, you all kind of identified something, but I really want to go around on Lindsay. I'll go back to you to start. Is that one of two things? Is either what would you recommend to someone if they're starting this process, or they feel like they're not using O365 or Microsoft 365 as it's now been renamed? What would you say? Where would be a place to start if they're just starting this journey? You can say that, is there a pitfall or something that you would either choose to avoid or do again or do sooner or something? So they're related question, but really, how would you recommend someone start, and what lessons did you learn as you started to maybe pass on some of that experience?
Yeah, I mean, and we did a similar thing that Mark and Betsy's companies did too, as we met with MyTech to, we had a few of the other employees at our firm that we went through and we really were intentional with how we were creating the different channels and the teams, and MyTech was giving their advice on making sure that we understood kind of all the back end features that that are created when you create just a Teams channel. So just understanding, making sure that, working as a team with MyTech, because we know what our organization needs and how we communicate. MyTech knows how to support it IT wise, but we need to figure out, how do we meet in the middle? Because the way that my company's Teams is set up is probably much different than Mark and Betsy's in, different ways, because it's just different ways that it needs to serve. So I think just making sure that you are very intentional with what you're choosing, just to kind of create that good foundation.
I appreciate that. So and by the way, for everyone listening, I did not plant. I did not expect some of the things that you're saying, everyone. So I appreciate the shout outs, and we've loved working with you and helping that, and I really do appreciate the collaboration. So Lindsay, taking that a step further as we go back to you, and then again I'll go around to Betsy and Mark too, is once that collaboration was done and you felt like you kind of had this initial momentum, what are some of is there something that you feel worked really well? I know you already alluded to like only sending messages in Teams, for instance, versus email, but is there something that worked really well for your organization, help drive that adoption, or something that you tried that didn't work, that you might suggest for someone to avoid?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think having a global pandemic hit right when we're starting to adopt it really helps drive adoption, because you have no other choice. So, I mean, it's hard to know how fast this would have taken off if we would have all been in our offices. We find ourselves, we're slowly getting back into the office, and we're still using Teams to communicate with someone down the hall because we can't meet face to face with them anymore.
Right.
What we're also seeing though is it's surprising to us. We do a lot of travel. Our attorneys do a lot of travel for depositions and court hearings, across the country. And a lot of them have all moved to video, but, the way that this might actually affect future court hearings and depositions, you don't need to incur all that cost of travel and everything else. It's, I think it's just showing everyone what this virtual tools can really help to, support your organization and just drive collaboration. I think, it might, some of the pitfalls is just making sure that I think as someone that is trying to get the whole company to adopt the technology, I think I would have been served better if I would have really taken the time to learn all of the different features, because I would have people come and ask me questions, and then I'd have to go search and try to figure it out really quick. If I couldn't figure it out, ping MyTech about it. So I think sometimes just having the person in charge try to really shore up as much resources as you can to know what you're doing to help your organization.
Yeah, Lindsay, I appreciate that. That's actually, I'm going to do a little shameless plug here. One of the things that we've heard from our clients is that, and we really, that's why we started our monthly power user groups, because we've identified that there's probably a subset of people, 2 or 3 people, depending on the size of the organization, that could really be that authority and really understand some of that to really help know that, yep, I feel good about this is based on what I understand, this is going to work for our organization and or work with us if that's applicable. But yeah, that's definitely, I appreciate you mentioning that, because having that understanding can really help, because the tools are not designed to enable you to be as autonomous as possible, right, while keeping security there. But how do you, it's better if you understand it. So that's a great point. I appreciate that. All right, Betsy, over to you. So as you drove adoption, again, are there things that you felt that worked really well? Or if someone was starting this process, where would you have them start? Just maybe some tips and tricks as far as what you found, or things to avoid.
Yeah, I mean, I think I can start with a pitfall or what I would do different is I would have gotten us started on this sooner. I just think about how it was March 2018 that we made the switch, and it wasn't until really like January 2020 that we like officially started using it. And there was just like so much available that we were paying for, right at the tips of our fingers. Like we had it right there. So I think just using it sooner. But to credit what Lindsay said, yes, I think I learned quite a bit of it, and definitely people came to me to ask questions about Office 365, but I think continuing just to learn, like I'm still learning, I still want to understand SharePoint better, and a lot of times it's just like I'm using To Do for this event or OneDrive, and just kind of encouraging that. I think, like you said, just having a few people on site that are the drivers that really know what they're doing and that are available to kind of offer some help, because it wasn't until I had a different coworker who was using Teams, she's the one that taught me. And it's not even in her job description to really be guiding and leading people in this. But something else that we did too, and something that I really value with my tech, is personal connection and just really getting to know the team that we're working with. And so we actually love going to their headquarters in Lakewood and going to some of the trainings that they offer. There's a lot of times free lunch and just a small group where we can actually hands-on dive into Office 365 and learn. And what's awesome is it isn't just for me in operations, it's for every single person on our team that is part of our My Tech Service Agreement that can go and learn. And that's really like individual learning and training. But the biggest thing for me, like I mentioned before, was sitting down with Jeff Woods, our service manager, and Sam Dennison, our account manager, and just really trying to get a grasp. I have notes of saying, this is what a channel is, this is what this does. And so that really helps. Just having those individual meetings and not being afraid to ask those questions of like, I know you've explained this 3 times, but I'm still trying to understand. And yes, like Lindsay said, COVID definitely helped us put it into action, but I'm thrilled to see that we were using it before too and really seeing success with it.
Yeah, thank you. That's one of the things. One of the things you said there is that it's don't be afraid to ask those questions.
Yeah.
And one of the things, in fact, I think this is a great segue to Mark and answering, because I know that as I've worked with different organizations, there's some people just are naturally more inclined to adapt and adopt new things, and others struggle with some of even the most basic tasks. And to those that you might think basic, right? So again, you have different varying levels of skill set, and I'm not trying to be negative about those who feel more challenged in this regard. It's just that inside your organization, you probably have both aspects, right, and both types of personalities, and making them comfortable to ask questions and creating a forum or an opportunity to do that. I appreciate you mentioning that, because that's definitely something that we've seen too across other organizations. So speaking of that, Mark, can you tell us a little bit about what would you do differently, or tips and tricks that you'd recommend, or pitfalls to avoid as to anyone listening, as far as from your perspective driving adoption?
Great. Yeah, we started bringing Office 365 into our fold in early 2019, and we're an organization. We do our best to be an organization that wants to be inclusive, to hear everybody's feedback, to have everybody in the decision process. So one of the things I would do differently is not look for consensus relative to Office 365 implementation. Not because not everyone's position and thinking is not valuable, but because of what Nathan highlighted, in that everybody is in a different spot, and that spot they are in relative to onboarding new technology is okay. We need to help one another. But we were really slow for a long period of time, because I was driving consensus. So in talking with my tech and with our team, we said, how can we move this along more quickly? And the team actually gave us feedback that we weren't moving fast enough, some of those early adopters. So when I look at what's important for those that are getting started, and I'm going to say the metaphorical and the theoretical approach, which is have a clear strategy of what you're attempting to do with IT, whether that's I want to drive more group collaboration, or I want faster turnaround, or whatever that strategy may be, get clear about that. And as I listen to Lindsay and Betsy, the other thing that stands out to me is what seemed to be really helpful for our group is I called and reached out to Nathan and Corey in late 2019 as we wanted to move faster. And I said, hey, I'm interested in some group training on site around this that the users are involved with, because I think part of what's successful is, Betsy, you highlighted this, MyTech does a great job in those on-site training sessions they have. We actually sent almost all of our team members to the O365 overview training to get them familiar with what was available. But then still we were moving so slow because of the consensus place. So then once we decided and put milestone dates in place, we had no idea the pandemic was going to happen, but we put milestone dates involved, and we did taped video training for our core group of power users that then was used for everybody else. And that's still available today. So we can go back, and those sessions that were led by Nathan in this case are there to continue. I get new learning from them every time I watch them. So, so what to do if you're just getting started? The old adage: get clear about your strategy, understand what you're trying to accomplish for the business plan that you have, and then an underpinning element that's also successful is our team asked a lot of questions, as I heard in the other panelists, about structure. How is SharePoint set? How is this different than the cloud? Or what's the cloud and what's our server? I mean, that was asked by our HR leader. And she said, oh, she used an analogy. So, so the server is a cloud over me, and a cloud is a cloud over everybody. And we're like, oh, okay, sure. If that helps you understand the difference between SharePoint and the server, great. So understanding that infrastructure that those folks at MyTech do was really helpful for us.
Thanks for that summary, Mark. So, all right, so relative to time, what I'm going to do, and that was a great segue, because I'd like to just kind of, one of the things that I always like to talk about is, as people go through this, I was actually coached by a productivity consultant and who's helped me, but and it's also a big part of our methodology is really identify the problem you're trying to solve. As Mark, you kind of summarized there as a great kind of lead off, is to look, get clear about the problem you're trying to solve and really understand that, because the clearer you are about the problem you are trying to solve, the more obvious the solution becomes, right? You'll be able to rule out the different ways that Microsoft 365 can solve the problem, if the clearer you are on the problem you're trying to solve. One of the things that we strongly recommend, if you heard anything, I'm hoping you did, but if you heard anything from today's session so far that were takeaways, like just a couple nuggets, one thing or two things to be able to do, write those down right now as far as things that you might want to take as your next steps. Again, I think it's important. We all are, wherever we are, that's kind of our location, and that's okay. It's just what's good for you to take your next step. Try and identify those and write those down, and see if you can start taking some baby steps on that here sooner than later. That'll help you kind of solidify some of the information. And this is also available for recording. So I'll really quick mention that we're hosting these a session like this, not necessarily a panel session, but a session like this every week. They're also available on our website and our YouTube channel. And this one will be available for recording here shortly, and we'll send an email afterwards. So I do want to, for those of you who only gave us 30 minutes, we're a little bit over our time, but I want to say thank you for attending. And I have a bonus question that I'll start off with for the attendees, but I'd like to ask all the attendees right now, if you have any questions you'd like to ask of the panelists, then please go ahead and post those in the Q&A section, excuse me. So I'll give you some time to do that by offering this this bonus question that I warned our panelists that I'd be asking if we had time. All right, so Lindsay, I'm going to go back to you. Starting the adoption of O365 is one thing, but as tools change, as your organization evolves and matures and starts learning how to use these tools better, there's an idea of continual improvement or iteration of how you're adopting. Is there anything that you've done on that front that you feel, I don't know, just talk about that a little bit. Is anything you've done there, and what you've learned, or what your experience has been?
Yeah, we're encouraging people. You know, we make announcements of online training, virtual trainings they can take advantage of. We also created an IT channel that stores all the different videos we've done, training sessions, everything internally. So it's almost, you know, if we have a new employee that we hire next week, they can go to that channel and they can see all of the important information related to using Office 365.
I love that. That's great, because I think that's one of the things that is, well, you didn't, no one mentioned that so far, is that you do training today. Well, what about that new person that starts tomorrow or next week or next quarter, right? So that's awesome that you've been, you know, capturing that from and being intentional from an onboarding perspective as well. So awesome. All right, Betsy, what about you? What are some of the things you feel Growing Home's doing relative to iterating or driving continual improvement?
Yeah, I first off just took a note of what Lindsay said. That's genius. I don't know why we have not been doing that. I love that so much. I think continually just learning. I'm kind of intimidated by SharePoint. I think that's what it's called, right? And I don't even have that off the top of my head. But yeah, I'm kind of like, I want to kind of start adopting that and implementing that with our team. And I think a lot of it is just continually learning. But I think some of the stuff that we've experienced too is just kind of waiting on Microsoft too, as we're understanding that there's updates to this. I'm like, I would love to be able to chat on Teams with people in our community that we work with, and that's not quite a thing that exists yet. But obviously I asked those questions to my tech, and they're really open and honest about the capability of Teams and the different resources, but they're also inform me of updates that are coming. Like Jeff, our service manager, sent me a tweet and was like, hey, Microsoft is down today, but they're trying to work on this. And I was like, that's awesome. Thanks for informing me. But I think just trying to be on the forefront of understanding what updates are coming and kind of how we can include using this. Yeah, I definitely feel really encouraged too by hearing what Lindsay said of, yeah, let's create a channel of items that anyone that starts new, like I'm also in human resources and I'm the one having to train people on Teams, but to be able to just say, check out this channel, here's a panel I'm on talking about this, or here's a video on how to use Teams or SharePoint or Outlook, is really encouraging.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you. And that's something that's Microsoft is, I don't know the number, but there's hundreds of changes, incremental changes that they're making, from what I understand, on a daily or weekly basis, at least weekly. So there's lots of those things, and we're trying to do our best to stay up on top of them. And I don't know, for those of you that, if you know that Microsoft usually publishes an email daily or weekly of the updates that are coming. And so it sometimes it's one of those things you're like, I can ignore that. But if you are interested, they actually do try and keep you up to date on the things that are coming. So I appreciate that, Betsy, because that's definitely one of the nice opportunities, but also challenges, is keeping up with those changes as they're evolving. So, all right, Mark, back to you. You know, what are some of the things you found your organization doing to iterate and continually improve utilization or adoption?
Great stuff, both Lindsay and Betsy, and it reminds me that the setup of our general channel, all staff channel, we do weekly stand-ups with our entire organization that's around the country now, even though there's under 50 of us. So those are all done via Teams. Teams is really the center place of our communication and infrastructure and data. So when I think of the continuous improvement, we have one of our team members that is just, he is so excited about analytics, teams, interconnectivity between different companies that we work with. And so we have a business intelligence initiative that is centered around teams, where each person internally and externally can interact with us and get reports, access different applications, data through the Teams environment. So that's a longer term initiative, but each month we improve on it and go go further with understanding, as I heard you say, Betsy. Sharing a comment one of our team members made. I was on a team call a couple of weeks ago, and one of our team members in marketing said, she just all of a sudden said out of the blue, boy, this COVID thing would have been a bleep show without Teams. And we all laughed, and there's not always a lot of stuff to laugh about right now, but it really is a solid tool, and that made me smile from an engagement standpoint. So we keep learning every day.
All right, excellent. All right, so I do see. I don't see any other questions at the moment from the audience, which has happened sometimes because that's just their. Hopefully, they're just listening and absorbing. But I'm going to do a quick summary here of things that I heard. So one, get key people of your organization involved, like early adopters. We title those people kind of power users. They're ones that are more apt to drive change, and they're excited about efficiency and creating efficiency and using new tools. Get the people involved in understanding the direction and strategy, and make an organizational decision that this is the direction we're going, right? Because when you have multiple tools that people are using because you haven't defined it, you got to start there, making those choices, and then get your team wrapped around doing some training. And then I love it that, going back to what Lindsay said, is like, look, we made the decision and we basically forced communication to go down this path to really make sure we were driving adoption. And yeah, any change is challenging inside of an organization, but it sounds like, at least from what I heard from the panelists today, that once the changes were made, even Mark, you just said it's a pretty solid tool to be able to help improve communication and collaboration inside of your organization. So with that said, I want to be respectful of everyone's time. The panelists, Lindsay, Betsy, and Mark, thank you so much for sharing your experiences with us today. We know that this is one of the most challenging aspects of any change, is driving adoption, whether it's technology or otherwise. And so thank you all very much. This session will, like I said, is recorded and will be sent out to everyone and will be available afterwards. So if you'd like to forward it or send it along to anybody, please do that. Feel free. And as every one of Betsy, Lindsay, and Mark said, we love sharing and talking about this and helping you drive adoption of these things, of these tools, because we've seen the benefits in our organization, and they've all spoken to the benefits of their organizations. And if we can help, we're game for helping. So reach out. We'd love to talk to you. And with that said, thanks a lot, everyone. And I don't know, Betsy or Mark or Lindsay, any final comments before we sign off?
Thanks for having us. And if there are any questions that do come up after, I'm happy to answer them offline as well.
Excellent. Thanks, Mark.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead, Lindsay.
Yeah, Lindsay can go for it.
Oh, I just said thanks. Same comments. Thanks for having us, and any other questions, I'm available as well.
Awesome.
Yeah, and I'll just plug this. We were not paid by MyTech to promote them, but at the end of the day, like, I really love you guys. I think I'm one of the biggest advocates for MyTech where I work. Like, I'm not getting incentivized to say go to their trainings, but truly it really makes a difference. That hands-on connection and personal attention will really help your organization. They care, they're here to listen. It's intimidating, but it's really worth it. I think everyone that's on this call already understands that MyTech is great, but just to encourage taking a next step further. It can be easy to just kind of sit back, but you'll really see a difference in your organization too.
Thanks, Betsy. And I appreciate that. Yeah. That I wasn't expecting that, but I do thank you. We are on that front. Again, all of the recordings are available. We'll send a link in the follow-up email for those of you who haven't known that we're doing that. Additionally, we are going to try and get back to in-person events as soon as it makes sense, because I know sometimes it's different doing it virtually versus in person. We can have a whole different level of impact, and so we do hope to get back to in-person events sooner than later. But of course, we're going to be mindful of the safety and health of everyone. So thank you for that, and we look forward to it. And stay safe and healthy out there, everybody, and we'll talk to you again soon. All right, thanks a lot. Bye.